Hello guys, welcome back to narsicloud.com. In our last video, we talked about basic IAM concepts. So what IAM is and what role does it play in accessing the resources, right? So like we talked about, it all comes down to user or app and the credentials and what kind of permissions that we assign to those credentials, and depending on that, what kind of resources a user can access, right? So we concluded with that, and in our today's video we will demo user creation and how do we assign permissions to that user, and when that user logs in, how does that permissions can control what kind of resources that user can access, right? So that's what we're gonna demo today. So let's get back to our console. So we have IAM service, so let's get back to that service IAM and go back to the users here. So we have different kinds of categories and different types of options in IAM. So I will go over all of them in detail as I explain these concepts, right? So today our goal is just to focus on users. So let's click on add create user and see. So like I said before, every user can be assigned two types of access types. So here one is programmatic access and one is console access. So programmatic access, like I said, it will give you access key, ID, and secret. So using those, you'll be able to access the resources programmatically. So which means from your application or through CLI or an SDK, any other development tools, right? So that's the purpose of programmatic access. So for today's video, let's focus on just the console access. So which means once you create this user, you can log into console using the password. So let's give some custom password. So let's uncheck this. It's just a demo, so we don't have to recreate the password on first login, right? Go to the next permissions, and here you can assign the permissions. So first, let's not do anything, let's not assign anything. Let's create a bare user and see and log in with that user and see how does it look like accessing the resources. So keep all of them default. I can go over all these options later. Okay, next, tags. So tags is basically that you can give some key and value pairs here, so that you can identify your resources properly. So just a demo, so you don't have to worry about that. So what you're saying is this user has no permissions. So like I said yesterday, if user doesn't have any permissions, there's no point of resources are useless, they cannot be accessed, and the user is dumb, right? That user cannot access anything. So that's the point of this demo. So I would like to show you that if you don't have permissions, how does that behave, right? Let's go ahead and create the user. So user has been created. So now let's log out of this current user. Now you can see demo user, logged in. So now I logged in with IAM user that we just created, right? So we didn't give any permissions, right? So let's try to access any of the services, and let's see if he's able to access. See, you don't have permissions to list buckets. So under S3, list buckets is one of the action. Since that user doesn't have any permissions, cannot do anything, right? So even doesn't show up any of these buttons, right? Everything is disabled. So we get back to any other service. For example, let's get back to EC2. See, all API errors. It's not showing proper message, but if you try to do any action, let's say launch instance, it will show the options, but when you select this, you're not authorized to perform this operation. So basically that user cannot do anything, right? So let's log out of this user and log back in with root user. We re-logged in with the root user. So So now let's give permissions to that IAM user, right? So let's get back to IAM and go back to the users. Select the user. You can add permissions. So how do we assign permissions? How could we add permissions to this? Through policies. So what is policy? Policy is a JSON document where you specify the set of permissions, like in some particular format, what kind of actions they can perform, what kind of access they get to particular service, right? So you can attach policies directly. So in policies, again, we have different types of policies. Okay, some of them, for example, if you see here, there are a lot of policies which are already created by AWS. Depending on most of the scenarios, these policies will be useful. We don't have to create by ourselves, but we can just go ahead and add them, right? For example, if you want to assign all administrator access to a user, you can just select that. So let's look at, you would like to give access to S3, right? Let's see if there is any policy that's been created by Amazon. So there is one S3 read-only access, right? So let's take that. How does it look like? A policy is a JSON document with a different array of statements, and each object will have effect, action, and resource, and there are other parameters as well. But for S3, the basic keys are effect, action, resource. So effect means, what is effect? It can specify allow or deny, right? And action, what kind of actions user can perform on this resource. That's what it means. And for S3, what it says is user can get all the objects, or you can list the buckets, right? And resource on all the buckets, all types of resources under S3. So that's what it says. I'll go deeper for policies in our next videos. So here, let's minimize that, and let's select that policy. Next review, add permissions. So we added permissions to that user right now, right? So this is the demo user. That's what we logged in. Now let's log out of this user, log back in. So now we logged in with IAM user, which is demo user, right? So let's get back to access the S3 service and see if we're able to list the buckets. Oh yeah, see, we're able to list the buckets, but right now we don't have any buckets here. But previously, if you remember, it was showing the error here that you don't have permissions to even list the buckets. So what type of permissions that we gave to this user is, under S3, the user can list the buckets or get the objects within the bucket, right? So now somehow it is showing up this create button, right? Let's go ahead and try to create and see if we're able to create it. We didn't give permissions to create it, right? So demo, let's see, bucket. Let's keep all of them default. Let's try to create bucket. See, appear response, access denied, because we didn't give permissions to create the bucket. We gave just to list the buckets or get the objects from that bucket, right? That's how it behaves. See how easy it is. So now if I go ahead and create, let's log out of this user and log back in with other user. So I logged in back with root user. So let's delete the permission for this user. Let's detach this policy. So once it is detached, that means that again this user doesn't have any permissions. So let's get back to, and now as a root user, I detached those permissions for that user. Now I'll log back. So now we logged in with demo user. Let's see if you go back to S3. Let's see if user is able to access these S3 buckets. Since we detached these policies, this user doesn't have those permissions anymore, so that user cannot do anything with these S3 buckets. So you see how easy it is to update these permissions for that user. All you have to do is go update these policies and take away, or you can add more permissions to it. Will take into effect immediately. and everything is controlled by policies, and all these permissions, we will play around with those policies later in this in the later videos, more deeper into it. So if we get back to IAM, so for today, it's all about user creation and how could we assign those policies, right? So what we did today, we created user, and we assigned a policy with S3 permissions to it, and we attached those policies to that user, and we logged in with that user with the console password, and we tried to access S3, right? And we detached those permissions, and again we tried to access S3, and we didn't have any permissions to we got that authorization error, right? So that's all, guys, for today. In our next video, we will go over more options that we have under IAM. And if you like this video, please click on like button, and please do subscribe, and we'll meet in the next video. Thank you. Bye.